In this lesson, we're going to talk a little bit about the different types of file formats that we can save out whenever working in Maya. Okay, so as we start to work inside of Maya and have the ability to save out our scene files, Maya really gives us two major choices as far as the file format that it's going to save out. One is a binary type format, and the other is an ASCII type format. So let's just take a few minutes to very quickly build up a little scene here, and then we'll just take a minute to illustrate the differences between what exactly a binary file is and what an ASCII file is. So let's just build up a really simple scene here. Let's go to Create, NURBS Primitives, and let's drop in a sphere. Okay, Maya's going to ask us to drop or drag this sphere onto the grid. There we go. Now let's make a few more spheres in here so that way we can make our Maya file size a little bit more substantial. Now, if we take a look over in this toolbar, we have the last command that we used. In that case, it's the sphere command or the create NURB sphere. So I can just click on this, come back and make a few more spheres. We'll drop a few in here just again to make our Maya file size a little bit more substantial. Okay, very good. Now let's go ahead and save this scene file out. So let's go to File, Save Scene As. You can see it's going to save this into our project directory inside the scenes folder. So let's call this something just maybe like test for demonstration's sake. And you can see that Maya's default format is a Maya binary. So let's go to Save As, and there we go. You can see that our file has now been saved out. Now let's save out another version of this exact same scene file in an ASCII format. So once again, we're going to go to File, Save Scene As. Just like before, we'll call this test, but this time, instead of a Maya binary, let's switch it to an ASCII. Right, and once again, Save As. So there's our file that's been saved out. Now let's take a look inside our project directory. In this case, again, Maya 2013, inside the scenes folder. And here's the two files that we just created. So really, these two scene files are pretty much identical as far as what is contained inside of these. First glance, you may notice that there is a slight difference in the file size between these two, even though they are the same exact scene file. The Maya ASCII file is usually going to be just a little bit larger compared to a binary. Binary files usually offer us a little bit of compression whenever the file size gets saved out. Sometimes that difference in file size may be really very marginal. Other times it may be pretty significant, but just depending on how big, how complex, and exactly what's contained inside of the scene file. Now, the size of the files isn't really what I want to point out. Instead, it's the information that's contained inside of these files that I want to show you. So if I were to open this up in maybe some sort of a text editing application, in my case, maybe something like Edit Plus is what I'm going to use, but you could use any text editing application you want, whether it's Notepad, Microsoft Word, WordPad, whatever the case may be. So I'm just going to click on this to open this up in Edit Plus. And with this binary file opened up, you can see the inner contents of this file where we can start to see any textures that are being used, any scene file settings, any vertex information, geometry information, animation information, whatever the case may be. Now, there are some instances where we could come in and actually edit this text document to change some of the information contained in this file. But really what I want to point out is the information that's contained up in this header area. So if you start to look, because a lot of this header information is machine generated, it may not always be readable by a text editing application. You can see we have a lot of just what appears to be gibberish. Now, it's important information. It's just that this data can't always be read by a basic text editing application. Now, that starts to become maybe a problem in some instances, where if this header information were to become corrupt or needed to be changed for whatever reason, we really don't have the ability to open and make significant changes to this file outside of Maya. And again, if this header information becomes corrupt or becomes at a point where it's not able to be opened by Maya, that becomes a real problem. Now, on the flip side, if I were to, let's say, open up the ASCII file, again, we'll just open this in Edit Plus. And to contrast, you can see the header information for this file is much, much cleaner. This is where we can start to see things like the Maya scene file version that this was created in, what the file name is set to, when it was modified, and so on. So again, we can come in here and make pretty significant adjustments. We could actually completely rebuild the scene from this text document. But the important thing is that if this header information were to ever become corrupted or ever needed to be changed, we can do that easily directly inside of this text editing application. Save the file out, and it can be opened perfectly inside of Maya. So, as you can see, we do have some benefits and some drawbacks to both of these. The drawback to an ASCII file is that it's a little bit larger, but the drawback to a binary file is that it's pretty much a closed format. We really don't have the ability to edit or make significant changes to this file outside of Maya. So because these ASCII files do offer us a lot more compatibility and a lot more ability to edit this file, you'll find that almost all of the project files and all of the scene files that are provided to you by digital tutors are almost always going to be in this ASCII format. Okay, now let's talk for just a moment about the process of opening a file inside of Maya. Now in this case we're working with Maya 2013, but what if we had a scene file built in Maya 2013 that we wanted to open up in, let's say, Maya 2010? So the process of taking a newer scene file and opening it up in an older version of Maya, we do get some backwards compatibility, but there is a very important option that we need to turn on first. So if we go to File, Open Scene, and then take a look inside this option box, we have this option for the file type, and if we turn on this Ignore Version, now we have the ability to open a newer version of Maya's scene file in an older version of Maya. Otherwise, if we have this option turned off, which it is by default, we basically have no backwards compatibility at that point. Now, I do want to point out that this is not necessarily a bulletproof option. So if we're trying to open up a Maya scene file that's a newer version than what we currently have, newer versions of Maya have obviously new features, new tools, new tool settings. Those may not always open properly in an older version of Maya. So keep in mind that you may be able to open the file, it just may not always open correctly. Now, back to the subject of the ASCII versus binary format. If we go up to File and Save Scene or Save Scene As, and go to the options for this, you can see right now I do have my file type set to an ASCII. We could set this to ASCII or binary. So mine is set to an ASCII, so that way any file that I save out will by default have this .ma extension on it. Okay, so that's a quick look at the difference between this Maya ASCII type file and this Maya binary, and some of the benefits and drawbacks of each one of these.